Do you ever feel like life has just become this inescapable labyrinth?
Oh, absolutely. All the time.
Right, like you're navigating this relentless daily grind, paying bills, trying to figure out, which political ideology actually makes sense.
Yeah, and carrying all that weight from whatever expectations were passed down to us.
Exactly. It honestly feels like having way too many tabs open in your brain, and eventually your internal processor it just slows to an absolute halt.
A very specific type of modern paralysis. I mean, we are completely overloaded with information and choices.
So many choices.
Right. But at the same time, we're entirely starved for a clear direction on how to actually live our lives.
Yeah, and so if your brain is full of those open spinning tabs, the subject of our deep dive today is essentially a proposal for a universal operating system to just close them.
Which I think we all desperately need.
For sure. So we are exploring translated excerpts from a really fascinating philosophical text called Tai Chi Thinking. It was written by an author named Xu Feng, and the translation was edited by Kinyu.
And it is quite a ride.
It really is. The framework here claims that the sheer chaos of modern life, from your daily commute all the way to your romantic relationships, can be solved by looking at the world as a strict, unyielding binary. Yin and yang.
Yes, the classic yin and yang.
Okay, let's unpack this. How exactly does viewing the world through a two-sided lens fix this modern feeling of being just totally burnt out?
Well, the core premise is really about radical simplification.
Yeah.
I mean, Tai Chi thinking basically asks you to stop looking at the millions of confusing detail.
The nuances, the gray areas.
Exactly. All those endless gray areas that just exhaust us.
Yeah.
Instead, it argues that if you strip away all that noise, every single situation boils down to a fundamental symmetry.
Like positive and negative.
Right. Positive and negative, physical and spiritual, true and false. The argument is that by forcing yourself to view the world strictly through this binary framework, you stop fighting the natural current of the universe.
And you finally find some sort of sustainable path forward.
That's the idea, yeah.
Yeah. But the text makes a really interesting move right up front. Before we can even start applying this binary to the outside world, it suggests we have to basically diagnose our own internal operating system.
Right, how we split our attention.
Exactly. How we divide our attention between the physical, material world we actually live in and the spiritual, non-material world we think about.
And the author categorizes humanity into three distinct types of people to explain exactly why you and I are so exhausted all the time.
Yes. And the psychological mechanism behind these categories is it's super compelling. So the first type of person the text identifies is the atheist.
Which is really interesting. And according to this framework, atheists are actually surprisingly happy.
Which feels completely counterintuitive to a lot of traditional spiritual teachings, right? But the reasoning here just makes so much sense. Why are they happy?
Because they have zero cognitive dissonance. Like none at all. They only care about the material world.
Right.
The text illustrates this beautifully. It says, if there's wine today, they drink and enjoy it. If there's no wine tomorrow, they drink plain water and they don't even worry about it.
They just don't stress over it.
Exactly. They don't believe in an afterlife. They aren't worried about accumulating karma or fearing divine retribution.
So because their entire reality is contained within the tangible present, they just do not suffer from that spiritual torment.
Right. The torment of wondering if they're doing things right for eternity.
It sounds incredibly light, honestly. You're just playing the game in front of you. And then you have the second group, which the text calls the ascetics, or the pure non-materialists.
And they're also perfectly content, but for the exact opposite reason.
Right. Their lack of friction comes from total detachment. The author claims that if the physical earth literally vanished tomorrow, this group wouldn't even bat an eye.
Because their minds are already completely relocated to the non-material realm.
Exactly. Which brings us to the third group. And this happens to be the vast majority of us, including most religious believers and, spiritually curious people.
Basically anyone trying to balance both.
Yeah. And according to the text, this group is living in a state of perpetual exhaustion.
Because we're hedging our bets.
It's totally like a cosmic FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. You're terrified of losing out on some sort of heavenly grace or spiritual enlightenment.
But you're equally terrified of missing out on worldly pleasures.
Like a comfortable home or, societal status.
Yeah.
You are essentially trying to stand in two different boats at the very same time.
Exactly. You want the promise of the afterlife, but you cling desperately to the material world. And because you are split right down the middle, You basically fail at both.
Wow, yeah.
The anxiety of the spiritual world ruins your enjoyment of the material world, and then your attachment to the material world corrupts your spiritual clarity.
It's a lose-lose situation.
Right.
So what is the fix here? Because most of us listening, we can't just abandon our lives to become full-blown ascetics. But we also can't just erase our spiritual curiosity.
Well, the text proposes what it calls a middle way, but it's a very specific division of labor.
Okay, what does that look like?
The author advocates for fully residing in the non-material world with your mind, but fully enjoying the material world with your physical body.
Okay, let's put that into a practical scenario. Like,
Yeah.
how do you actually do that when you have to pay rent or deal with a terrible boss?
It's sort of like being an actor in a play. Your body is on stage, it's wearing the costume, it's saying the lines, it's feeling the heat of the stage lights, right?
Yeah.
It's fully engaged in the drama of the scene, but your mind is sitting quietly in the back row of the empty theater, just watching.
Oh, I like that.
You let your body experience the joys and frustrations of existence, but your core consciousness remains totally detached from the stress of the outcomes.
That makes a lot of sense. Your mind is basically already living in a heavenly state, completely untouchable by the daily grind. Okay, so if that covers the internal balance, how does Tai Chi thinking view the external world? Because it's one thing to detach your mind when you're sitting in traffic,
Right.
but it's entirely different when we start talking about the grand concepts of morality or the deep injustices of society. Like, if yin and yang are about a unity of opposites, what does that mean for something as foundational as good and evil?
Well, this is where the philosophical framework gets highly provocative, because it applies this uncompromising logic of physics directly to human morality.
It really does. I mean, think about the concept of Satan or ultimate evil for a second. The author actually defends the necessity of Satan.
Yeah, which is a bold claim.
Very bold. And just to be clear to you listening, we are presenting this strictly as the author's philosophical framework. We aren't taking sides here.
Exactly. Just exploring the text.
Right. But the text argues that people who ask why a compassionate greatest creator doesn't just destroy Satan are completely missing the mechanics of how a universe actually operates.
What's fascinating here is the absolute reliance on structural symmetry. According to the text, good and evil are not like a battle to be won.
What are they then?
They are poles on a magnet. Just like you cannot have a North Pole without a South Pole, you cannot have heaven without hell. Destroying Satan wouldn't result in a utopian universe of pure goodness.
Right. If you remove the negative pole from a battery, the battery doesn't suddenly become superpowered. It just stops working entirely.
Precisely. The author frames the existence of Satan not as a cosmic failure or some glitch in the system, but as a load-bearing pillar.
A pillar holding everything up.
Yeah, it's the creator's way of keeping the universe from collapsing. If you destroy the negative force, the positive force ceases to exist too, and the entire universe just reverts to a chaotic, lifeless nothingness.
It's a wild perspective, honestly, viewing evil as a structural necessity for existence. But the author doesn't just leave this in the spiritual realm, right?
Oh no, not at all.
He takes this principle of necessary opposites and applies it directly to human society, launching a major critique against socialism and the historical desire to equalize wealth.
Yes, there's a very vivid analogy used about a gardener.
I remember that part.
So, the author imagines trying to make his gardener his total equal in every way, just to perfectly balance their standing. He proposes swapping tasks, the gardener writes the complex philosophical essays, and the author cleans the yard and manages the household.
And the conclusion is that efficiency would just violently plummet.
Yeah.
It would take the gardener years to write a single essay, and the author would do a terrible job keeping the physical property functioning.
Right.
The quote that really illustrates this was, quote, "A lion would go hungry while a squirrel would be overfed."
It's a very targeted critique of forced equality. The text argues that trying to eliminate the natural distinctions between mental and physical laborers, or trying to forcefully equalize urban and rural areas, it actually restricts natural productivity.
And wastes human intelligence. But, I mean, so what does this all mean? I have to push back here a little bit.
Sure.
Because if you're someone struggling to pay your heating bill, hearing a philosophy say, well, wealthy and poor are just the necessary poles of the universe, like a magnet that sounds incredibly dismissive.
It does.
Is the text suggesting we just accept human suffering and institutional inequality?
That's a vital question. And the text isn't advocating for cruelty or complacency. The author's point is that concepts like superior and inferior or wealthy and poor are natural unities of opposites.
Just like yin and yang.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They will always exist in some form. Trying to force a society into absolute homogeneous equality violates natural law, and according to the author, usually results in massive suffering anyway.
Right.
Understanding this isn't about giving up on your own life, it is about viewing societal contradictions calmly.
Okay, so it's really about managing expectations. You stop banging your head against the wall trying to achieve this flawless utopian equality that the universe literally isn't built to support. Instead, you analyze the reality in front of you and set realistic directions for your own personal growth rather than trying to fix the entire grand system.
Right, which leads directly into the text advice on how we are actually supposed to interact with the people around us.
Because if the universe has this grand mechanical balance that we aren't supposed to forcefully dismantle, what is our personal role?
W- The text is shockingly blunt about this. Our role is to realize how incredibly small we are.
Yeah, the author compares us to blades of grass, which is humbling.
Very. The idea that a single blade of grass could alter the ecosystem of an entire forest is absurd. So attempting to change human society at large, or even trying to fundamentally change the personalities of our closest family members, it's completely futile.
It's like trying to rewrite the script of a movie while you are just a spectator sitting in the theater.
That's a perfect way to put it. The Tao, or the flow of the universe, has these grand cosmic strategies that are entirely beyond human perception.
And because of that, the text offers some incredibly pragmatic, almost humorous advice for dealing with the less savory characters we inevitably meet in life.
Oh yeah, the advice on dealing with fraudsters, thieves, and what the text calls scoundrels is very revealing.
Tell me about it.
The author says these people are just passing episodes. They're essentially friction points arranged by the universe to test your balance.
So you don't need to dwell on them.
Exactly. You don't need to launch a crusade against them.
The text actually says it is perfectly fine to occasionally curse at them to vent your emotions. Which, wait, does that mean I have a cosmic free pass to just scream at the guy who cuts me off in traffic?
Well, not quite a free pass for unchecked rage. The specific advice is to speak to people in their way and to ghosts in theirs.
Okay, what does that mean practically?
The idea is that if you encounter negative, hostile energy, a quote-unquote ghost, you don't try to reason with it using pure, gentle logic.
Right, that wouldn't work.
You reflect its energy back just enough to handle the situation, vent the friction, and then immediately drop it. You don't absorb their toxicity into your own spiritual center.
That makes a lot of sense, but there is a much more serious warning attached to this idea of not interfering, isn't there?
Yes. The author strongly warns against the trap of trying to be a good person or acting as a moral authority.
Which feels so backward at first. But if we connect this to the bigger picture we discussed earlier, that evil is a structural necessity, then acting as a self-appointed moral crusader can actually be cosmically harmful.
Precisely.
Let's use the analogy the text provides, because this completely reframed the concept for me. Think about law enforcement.
Okay.
Sometimes the police place an undercover agent or an informant deep inside a criminal ring to gather intelligence and eventually dismantle it. The police are using criminals to catch criminals.
Right, a classic sting operation.
Right. Yeah. But if you, as a well-meaning good person, stumble upon this and try to stop the undercover agent because they look like a bad guy to you, well, you haven't helped. You have just ruined a grand, complex sting operation.
Because you lack the macro perspective of the universe, actions that seem morally good on your local human level might actually be disrupting a necessary larger strategy employed by the Tao.
It's a profound argument for just minding your own business.
It really is.
So if we aren't supposed to fix society, and we aren't supposed to force our loved ones to change, and we aren't even supposed to fight the bad guys too hard, what does it mean to actually care for someone?
True care, according to the text, is actually not worrying.
Wow.
Yeah, the author explicitly states that worrying acts like a magnetic force that attracts negativity. The more you agonize over the world or frantically try to control other people's paths, the more energetic harm you do to yourself and to them.
So what should we be focusing on then?
Our singular focus should just be perfecting our own internal balance and extending our own life, and that's life with capital letters to what the author calls the Celestial Islands continent.
Hold on, I need to stop you there. The Celestial Islands continent. Is the author talking about a literal, physical place we are trying to travel to, or is this a metaphor?
In the context of this framework, it is presented as a higher dimensional state of existence. It isn't a physical island on Earth somewhere.
Okay, good to know.
It's a conceptual destination of perfect harmony. The idea is that by mastering Tai Chi thinking, by balancing your yin and yang perfectly, your consciousness eventually graduates from the heavy, exhausting gravity of this material realm.
And it ascends to this higher continent of pure life.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. It is the ultimate endpoint of basically getting out of your own way. And this deep acceptance of the universe's flow, it leads us to how the text views history and time itself.
Yes, because if you accept the present moment without fighting it, you start to see the much larger patterns.
And the text leans heavily on the cyclical nature of history. It quotes ancient proverbs like 30 years east of the river, 30 years west of the river.
And when things reach their peak, they begin to decline.
Right. The author points to the fall of massive powers like the Roman Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the British Empire as undeniable proof. Great strength inevitably gives way to weakness.
What is long divided will unite, and what is united will inevitably divide again. It is the continuous, breathing transformation of yin and yang on a global scale.
But what makes this specific era in history unique, according to the author, is the sheer acceleration of this transformation.
Things are moving faster than they ever have in human history.
Yeah, we went from writing letters on parchment or bamboo slips to old typewriters to instant global computer networks.
Wars shifted from close combat with swords over months to long-range satellite attacks in seconds. The transformation of forms is just exponentially faster.
Wait, so if society, technology, and information are speeding up at this, like fiber optic rate, does this mean traditional slow methods of spiritual self-improvement are totally obsolete?
Yes, absolutely. The text explicitly states that traditional cultivation practices are simply too slow for the modern era. Things like long fasting, isolated meditation, or fetal breathing.
Let's clarify that really quickly. Fetal breathing, what is that?
It is an ancient Taoist practice where a person attempts to return their breathing patterns to that of an infant in the womb. It's incredibly slow, completely internal, and requires immense focus.
Sounds tough.
It's a powerful practice, but the framework argues we simply don't have the decades of isolation required to master it anymore. The world is moving way too fast.
So if we can't retreat to a cave for 20 years to find balance, how do we keep up?
We have to take shortcuts.
Right.
And those shortcuts are entirely mental.
Meaning what?
The author argues we must begin with our thinking, adopting frameworks like Tai Chi thinking, to achieve in one day what took our predecessors a lifetime of physical meditation.
That is a huge shift.
And furthermore, the text declares that the era of individual heroism is completely over.
Because of the massive information explosion. I mean, no single person can possibly master everything anymore. You can't be a lone genius who knows all the answers to physics, biology, politics, and spirituality.
Exactly. Isolation and total self-reliance are no longer viable survival strategies.
So what's the alternative?
The only way to survive this acceleration without burning out is to act as a specialized cell within a larger body of collective wisdom. We have to integrate with others.
Okay, so we've gone from the cosmic balance of good and evil to the cycles of global empires to the speed of the information age. But here is where the text brings Tai Chi thinking down to the most intimate level possible.
Right. Human biology and our romantic relationships.
The text introduces the concept of carrying yin and embracing yang, which is a foundational principle deeply rooted in traditional Chinese medicine.
Let's define those specific energies for a second, just so we're all on the exact same page.
Good idea.
Yin represents the spiritual, the internal, the non-material, the receptive, and the feminine. Yang represents the physical, the external, the material, the active, and the masculine.
And true health, whether we're talking about a physical body, a society, or the entire cosmos, relies on the harmonious interplay of these two forces.
Right. If you have a massive excess of yin energy without enough yang to balance it, you get a disorder, and vice versa.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because the author takes this ancient energetic binary and uses it to launch a highly controversial critique of modern monogamy.
It really takes a grand cosmic theory and drops it right onto the couch in your living room.
It does. And again, maintaining strict impartiality here, we are just exploring the mechanics of the author's logic for you guys listening. But the text argues that the traditional nuclear family, the standard husband and wife dynamic, is fundamentally flawed when it comes to balancing these intense cosmic energies.
This raises a fascinating and honestly difficult question about how we view compatibility.
How so?
Well, the author's logic states that a highly strong, masculine man someone overflowing with yang energy, requires an immense amount of gentle, feminine yin energy to stay balanced.
Right.
Conversely, a deeply gentle, receptive woman requires an immense amount of strong yang energy to anchor her.
But the text argues that finding a perfect one-to-one energetic match in a single human being is incredibly rare.
Almost statistically impossible, according to the author.
So what happens if a husband lacks sufficient yang strength in the real world? The wife is basically forced to become strong and aggressive to compensate for the family's survival.
And that causes deep, agonizing friction.
Because it forces her to act against her natural energetic resting state.
Exactly. And if both partners are highly yang, they constantly clash, trying to dominate the space. If both are highly yin, they suppress themselves, they avoid conflict, and the household just fills with this heavy, passive resentment.
Because one single person simply cannot provide the vast, endless amount of opposite energy required by someone who sits at the extreme end of the spectrum.
The author claims this mismatch is exactly why modern couples are trapped in a lifetime of mental and emotional torment.
They're essentially in an energetic chokehold, preventing them from freely expressing their true personalities without destroying their partner.
So to solve this widespread imbalance, the author proposes a deeply radical solution. He suggests moving away from the husband-wife dynamic entirely.
Enter what the text calls the 1,000-year world system.
Yes.
The author advocates for a multi-partner or even a completely no husband, no wife society. A new paradigm where people are encouraged to love as much as possible, freely exchanging yin and yang energies across multiple connections to achieve ultimate personal and collective balance.
It's taking the abstract principle of Tai Chi, the constant flowing exchange of opposites, and applying it to the literal structure of human intimacy.
It removes the pressure of expecting one person to be your entire energetic counterweight.
It is a massive reimagining of society based entirely on cosmic flow. It assumes that if we remove the rigid societal boundaries we've built, energy will naturally find its perfect level, sort of like water.
It's certainly a framework that attempts to leave no stone unturned. I mean, it categorizes every single aspect of existence, from the highest spiritual realm all the way down to the most private moments of human connection, into two opposing yet unified forces.
It really does try to encompass everything.
So if you take anything away from this deep dive today, it is the profound realization that exhaustion, that feeling of having too many tabs open in your brain, comes from fighting the current.
It comes from wanting heaven while clinging to earth.
Yes. It comes from demanding a utopian equality that the universe literally isn't built for. And it comes from trying to force perfect balance onto totally imperfect situations.
The promise of Tai Chi thinking is that if you accept the binary, if you just stop fighting the existence of the negative pole, you can finally close all those exhausting tabs.
But just when you think you've grasped the entire system, the author leaves us with one final incredible challenge at the very end of the text.
He asks a simple question. Is Tai Chi thinking the highest possible wisdom?
And his answer is no. He claims there is one step higher, a state he calls formless thinking.
Which completely flips the script. If Tai Chi thinking is the ultimate operating system for categorizing the entire universe into these two clear, opposing forces of yin and yang, what happens to our perception of reality when we remove those categories entirely?
Yeah, what does it actually mean to experience existence without any form, without any boundaries, and without any opposites at all?
It is the ultimate paradox. You spend your life mastering the rules of the binary, only to realize the final goal is to transcend the need for rules altogether.
It's like finally installing the perfect software to organize your computer, only to realize the real answer is just throwing the computer out the window. Something to mull over as you navigate your own labyrinth today.